Hi, my name is Stephanie Burdette. Thank you for joining me today to review Generation Z, Perspectives of a Positive Workplace Environment. This study, conducted by Leslie and colleagues, investigates how Gen Z individuals perceive the elements that create positive workplace environments using Q methodology to capture their unique perspectives. Interestingly, Gen Z is often stereotyped as less engaged in the workplace despite being highly success-oriented. This study explored whether or not there are differences within the generation that could offer a more nuanced understanding of Gen Z workplace perceptions and motivations. The researchers identified three distinct intra-generational subgroups within Gen Z. The study also identified a salient commonality among all three subgroups, which is that the Gen Z cohort prioritizes working for companies with high moral and ethical standards. In the introduction, the authors explain that generations are defined as social or birth cohorts that share unique social and cultural events that define their upbringing. These unique experiences lead to the development of similar lifestyles and perspectives, which influence a generation of individual perspectives, such as expectations and aspirations. Generational differences are especially noticeable in the workplace, where employees from different generations often have distinct expectations of what a positive environment at work looks like. Mannheim's theory of generations suggests that generations are determined by a period of time and shared experiences based on social and historical context. He also acknowledges that there are smaller subgroups within each generation, what he called generation units. These units explain why individuals within the same generation can express very different preferences and priorities. Mannheim's work gives context for Leslie's Gen Z study and emphasizes the importance of recognizing both intra-generational differences, which highlight the diversity within Gen Z itself, and intergenerational differences, which explain how Gen Z compares to other generations in the workplace. The youngest generation entering the workforce, Gen Z, brings unique habits, abilities, and ways of processing information that set them apart from previous generations. To manage an increasingly diverse workforce effectively, employers need to understand these expectations and values. This study explores those workplace perceptions within Gen Z with a focus on identifying differences among subgroups of this generation, rather than treating them as a homogeneous group. This study provides helpful context by outlining the four generations that are currently active in the workforce. Baby boomers, those born between 1946 and 1964, many of whom are now approaching retirement, continue to hold significant roles in organizations, often in positions of authority. They are recognized as hardworking and dedicated employees, typically motivated by raises, promotions, and verbal praise. Research also suggests they exhibit a high tolerance for stress and are more likely than other generations to stay in jobs they do not necessarily enjoy, reflecting a traditional attitude toward work and loyalty to employers. Generation X, those born between 1965 and 1980, are less motivated by promotions or financial incentives compared to baby boomers. Instead, they place a greater emphasis on work-life balance and tend to move between multiple employers during their careers, which often leads to perceptions of lower organizational loyalty. They value opportunities for continued education and training and are often described as independent and resourceful, preferring autonomy in their work. Millennials, born between 1981 and 1995, are completely comfortable navigating technology and online platforms. However, their constant connectivity can sometimes interfere with productivity. In the workplace, millennials highly value feedback and guidance from supervisors and often seek clear, explicit instructions to understand expectations. They also value collaboration and opportunities to engage in meaningful, purpose-driven work. Finally, Gen Z, born between 1996 and 2010, are digital natives who have never known a world without the internet. They are adaptable, innovative, and highly connected and report feeling immense pressure from their parents to be successful in their studies. According to the research, Gen Z employees desire ethical employers, open communication, and balance between work and personal life while still being eager to learn and grow. These preferences set the stage for this study's focus on the diversity within Gen Z itself. In this study, Leslie and colleagues explored workplace perceptions among Gen Z as a whole, and they explored differences within Gen Z to see if they could identify subgroups. Based on the gaps in current research, Leslie and colleagues proposed the following research questions. Their first was, what are Gen Z perceptions of a positive workplace environment? Their second research question was, what generation units of Generation Z exist based on an analysis of their workplace perceptions? The work of Leslie and colleagues is timely because very little research has examined what Gen Z truly values in the workplace, leaving gaps in understanding their preferences and motivations. While some studies suggest Gen Z is only moderately engaged, other findings indicate they desire more autonomy, with many expressing interest in working for themselves. Interestingly, despite being fluent with tech, Gen Z still values face-to-face communication and is especially drawn to employers that make a positive social impact. Much of the existing literature focuses on their media use and consumer behavior, but few studies explore their workplace expectations. This study is relevant because it not only investigates Gen Z's workplace preferences, but also identifies distinct subgroups or generation units, as explained by Mannheim, within the cohort, which could offer employers insight into a more nuanced understanding of this generation. This study used a research approach called Q methodology, which is designed to understand people's subjective viewpoints in a structured and systematic way. Q methodology can be used to describe a population of viewpoints, including tastes, preferences, sentiments, goals, and motivations, and is especially suited for mixed method research. Unlike surveys that measure how many people agree or disagree with a statement, Q methodology digs deeper with ranking and follow-up questioning to explore why people hold certain perspectives and how those perspectives cluster together into patterns of thought. This method was a great choice for this study because Gen Z is a diverse group with a range of values and workplace expectations. Using Q methodology helped the researchers uncover shared ways of thinking and priorities about what makes a workplace positive, while also identifying the differences among subgroups within the generation. We'll revisit these concepts in the data collection review. This study included 41 participants, all between the ages of 18 and 23, representing early members of Gen Z. The researchers used purposive sampling, meaning participants were initially selected because they fit the characteristics needed for the study. The sample included a fairly equal balance of male and female participants, ensuring that both perspectives were represented. All participants were students at a private university in the Mountain West region of the United States. The researchers began by developing a list of over 100 statements about workplace preferences drawn from academic literature, social media, and interviews. The statements represented perceptions regarding workplace environment, coworkers, employers, pay and benefits, and workplace dynamics. Those statements were then reviewed and refined with input from a Gen Z focus group, which helped narrow the list to 42 key statements that best represented a range of workplace perceptions. Participants then completed a Q-sort, ranking the 42 statements from most agree, with a +4, to least agree, with a -4. This forced ranking made it clear which ideas mattered most to each participant. After collecting the sorts, the information from each participant was further clarified by asking a series of 3 structured questions. The researchers then used factor analysis to find clusters of similar perspectives, which produced groups of participants who thought about positive workplaces in similar ways. This process allowed the researchers to reveal clear and distinct patterns in how Gen Z views the workplace. 3 distinct factors emerged. Statistical analysis of the data confirmed that Gen Z is not a homogeneous group. 3 distinct subgroups or factors of perspectives emerged. These generation units are social investors, chill worker bees, and go-getters. The social investor group of Gen Z value work-life balance. Family and home life take priority for them. They seek ethically minded companies making meaningful social impacts. They desire opportunities for personal growth and skill development and appreciate clear communication and approachable leaders. Mutual respect is a particularly important value, as they value this across all levels of an organization, all the way down to the interns. The chill worker bees of Gen Z thrive in comfortable, safe, and stable environments. They quietly complete work effectively and efficiently and prioritize job security and low-stress conditions. They prefer clear instructions and open communication. Physical comfort, as in the environment that they work in, light space tools, and emotional safety are essential for this group. The go-getters of Gen Z see work as a place for growth, innovation, and impact. They seek regular feedback and constructive communication. They desire resume-building experiences such as projects, training, and conferences, and they are motivated by ethics and social responsibility in their work. They thrive in dynamic, engaging, and challenging environments. Among the Gen Z participants in this study, shared perspectives about what makes a workplace positive also emerged. They expect the organization they work for to have high moral and ethical standards. They value clear communication across the board. They prioritize fostering positive relationships in the workplace. This study supports Mannheim's acknowledgement that generation units exist within a whole generation. Gen Z is indeed multidimensional. Most importantly, for the workplace setting, the study found evidence of intergenerational overlap, meaning some values held by Gen Z are similar to those of previous generations, particularly Generation X. For example, chill worker bees share Gen X's desire for security and flexibility rather than being driven by promotions or hierarchy. Go-getters overlap with Gen X in their preference for learning through problem solving. Gen Z social investors align with Gen X in their emphasis on work-life balance. These findings show that while Gen Z is unique, some of their values mirror those of earlier generations. This highlights that workplace priorities can connect across generational lines. This study can help managers and HR professionals develop more effective strategies for welcoming Gen Z workers into their organizations. No generation should be considered one size fits all, and there are overlaps among the values of different generations that can be identified, appreciated, and developed. Engaging the strengths of each subgroup within Gen Z can produce more positive outcomes in the workplace. Leslie and colleagues acknowledge that this study has limitations. Their suggestions for future research include using expanded sampling demographics, using a different method, as the Q method does not necessarily evaluate adequate levels of subjectivity nor quantify what proportions of Gen Z sample fall into each factor. Examining the diversity among Gen Z's definitions of effective communication, high morals, and work-life balance would be of interest as well. This study shows that Generation Z has some distinct differences from other generations. However, it doesn't need to be overlooked that there is meaningful overlap with older cohorts that have likely been shaped by their close interactions with those generations. Gen Z is not a single uniform group. It is made up of 3 distinct generation units: social investors, chill worker bees, and go-getters. There is also intra-generational overlap among these subgroups, reflecting shared values that coexist alongside unique priorities. The findings of this study suggest that employers who understand both the unique traits and the common themes across Gen Z can create workplaces that are more engaging, productive, and satisfying for everyone. Thank you for joining me today and following along.